and welcome to Categories TV. Our special guest today is drummer Quinton Kufahl. I've interviewed you a couple times in the past, Quinton. Now, let me ask you, because you are obviously a drummer, but in looking at some of your videos that were up on YouTube, I think it's also fair to call you a performance artist. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I really think that music is more than just music. For a lot of people, it's purely entertainment, but it can also be an art form, and you are a musical artist, not just a musician. I think everyone starts out being a musician, but eventually you have to evolve into being a musical artist at some point.
What I dig about what you're doing, obviously you are a drummer, but only thing I can really compare it to is kind of what Carmine Appice does, in the sense that he is so much more than a drummer. I mean, if you've ever seen the guy play, he's such a physical player, and not to say you're trying to copy what Carmine's doing, because that's not exact. It's the farthest thing from. But I'm just the only thing I can really compare to. But like, I was in prepping for this, I went on YouTube and I was watching the video you have up for the chopper, and it kind of reminded me of like seeing guys like Frankie Banali or Eric Carr in concert. Just like Eric Carr, just I mean, he see him like up on, he'd be banging those drums away, and he'd be like really be putting his heart and soul into it. And you don't even, you don't even have a band, backing up. It's just all you, and that's kind of what is so different about what you're doing that I dig.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I love Frankie, I love Eric Carr, I love Carmine. It's it's tough to find musicians that kind of check all the boxes. In a perfect situation, I really want 2 to 4 other people that kind of look like this and are musically capable of maybe so much more than what they look like. I think there's a stigma attached with looking either retro or like a rock star, and a lot of people then suddenly think that you are limited in your musical capabilities. But you look at a band like Black Veil Brides, and they are musically beyond I think what people would assume their look is. And also,
you can't get past the look, if I think is what you're trying to say. But if you go a little deeper and you listen to the music, you might actually like it.
Yeah. And to talk about, I mean, because it's so hard to find people, I don't want to just sit on my hands and wait for lightning to strike. So that's why I did these different drum solos, and they're drum solo singles. Bands release singles, and why can't a drummer release a prepared, orchestrated piece of music?
I dig that, and again, you could kind of go the typical route and say, well, I'm just going to wait till a band comes knocking on my door. But again, that's not how it works. You gotta keep yourself busy. You gotta keep out there. And I dig the fact that you I seen something you did last week. I think a drummer duel, and that looks like a pretty cool event. And again, I think as a musician, for what you're doing, for people coming to these shows, it makes it fun, because who says you need a band to back you up? I mean, it's great if you can get that, but I dig the fact that you don't need that, Quinton, that you can go out there and just put on like the ultimate drum show, or whatever you want to call this.
Thank you. Yeah, and I also don't want it to come off as that hopefully I'm not hard to work with. I don't think I am. I like to be cool as a cucumber, easygoing, but it's more so just a necessity to perform something that's from here.
Yeah.
So to talk about the drummer duel, I did not put that together. That was purely a contest that a company called Soundspace had put together. Specifically, Michelle Stone had orchestrated the whole ordeal and got together 8 drummers to battle each other and determine a winner.
Yeah.
So we played to some backing tracks. We've never heard them before. There's a very high stakes, difficult situation. And then after you played your prepared, well, not your prepared, your backing track, you then had to play an open solo or a freestyle solo. So fortunately for me, I have quite a few of those prepared. So I got to perform 2022. I had done Chopper.
Yeah.
Not the same effect on a Ringo Starr kind of setup as it is with the 4 bass drums and the array of toms and smoke machines shooting out of bass drums and everything. But, you know, I did my best on it.
And I dig the fact that like it's a freestyle kind of thing as opposed, I mean, even as a musician for you, Quinton, you've been up on stage, you played a lot of, songs that people know that, great classic rock songs. But the thing is, to be able to get up on stage and do something like that, and where you don't have to play a song a certain way, you can just kind of freestyle and whatever comes out, and people love it,
Yeah. It's always fun to put your own twist on something.
Yeah.
And but not also take away from the legacy that's within the song,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants to hear the middle of Tom Sawyer.
Sure.
That's whether you're a drummer or you're not, somebody off the street. It's a very recognizable and familiar pattern and grouping of notes. So if you're not going to play that as close as possible, it's a weird balance, if that makes sense.
And what I dig about what you're doing right now is you're kind of creating your own thing. You're kind of this is new. There's not a lot of other people out there doing it. There's some, but that's what's cool is you're kind of creating your own path.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, if we look at someone like Travis Barker or Eddie Van Halen, they've been very successful in forging their own brand and forging their own identity that supersedes the musical element.
Yeah. Like I talked, I've interviewed Carmine a couple times. Keep bringing him up, but like he's such an innovator when it comes to drums. Like one of the things he said when I interviewed him for the very first time, he says his thing is about when people think of drums, typically you think the drummer is the guy in the back of the stage. He's like, my whole approach to the drums is bringing the drums, in the front, making people really take notice of what I'm doing.
Absolutely. And I'm about the same thing. I preach the same words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, he was telling me, I don't know if you've ever heard about the famous, Guitar Center guitar-thon thing. Carmine, the legendary drummer that was his idea. That was his baby that he originally came up with, a drummer, coming up with the thing for guitar players.
That's awesome. Well, the Guitar Center used to do drum-offs too, and I had participated in those as well. And I mean, what a cool thing. I mean, it costs nothing to sign up, only your time.
Yeah, let me correct myself. Let me correct myself. Yeah, that's what it was, the drumathon. He said that was his idea. He said, because for years they'd had the thing for the guitar players. He said, why don't you have an event for the drummers,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I had explained to a different manager of that drummer duel thing. It seems like as humans, there's a bit of the caveman element in all of us. And what I mean by that is humans always love fire. If there's a fire pit or anything related to a flame or a fire, we're just instinctively drawn to that for some reason. And then the other thing is drums. People just love seeing somebody bash on a drum kit for some reason. It's very, very primal.
Fire. I got memories of seeing like videos of Alex Van Halen like setting his drums on fire and stuff like that. So that goes all the way back. Yeah, you're so right about that.
I mean, Alex Van Halen too. What a beast. Severely underrated.
I totally agree. I mean, look at like what he did on Hot for Teacher. Well, most people don't think of Van Halen as a metal band. That's probably as metal as they got,
Yeah, I mean, there's moments. Humans Being,
sure.
Like the verses in Humans Being are pretty heavy.
Definitely. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is when people kind of throw that word around metal, and like people say, oh, Metallica, they used to be metal, they're not metal, but I think metal is just like you said, it's something with a just a little heavier edge than typical pop music.
Yeah, I mean, it always has to evolve, right?
Yeah.
If you look at Black Sabbath or something, that still holds up as heavy, but it's maybe Cannibal Corpse heavy. Yeah. And what's considered heavy to some is not to others. So it's a sliding scale. It's like pop music.
Yeah.
I mean, Motley Crue can be pop music.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But I think it just depends on the situation.
Yeah. And I see that you have a single coming out. What is it? 6:30. Is it Phase? Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you. June 30th, I prepared up another drum solo single, and what can I tell about? So the spark for it was I had moved to Nashville about 3 months ago,
Oh,
and my dad and I are drum collectors in our own right. We seek out strange and unusual larger drum kits. So he had purchased a Ludwig Vistalite kit that was a alternating black and white stripe pattern.
oh,
So all of the stripes are individual Vistalite pieces that are fused together. It's an original 70s Vistalite, not a
yeah,
reissue. And he had this kit, and I'd used it for a music video, but in preparation for this move, he had said, if you want to sell it, to make room for some of your other belongings, like that's okay. We're not using it,
yeah,
and we're kind of trying to thin the herd of kits that we have. So I tried selling it, got lowballed a lot, which is a shame, but had thought, well, it would be really awesome if I could construct a solo around this drum set. So
sure.
that way, the money that he had spent on it wasn't just used for one video, but two, because the video I had used it for previously was a music video in the
Okay.
sense that you really couldn't hear the drums and how they sounded. And Vista lights are just loud and proud
Wow.
because they're made of acrylic.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
with that in mind, I had thought about what would I want to do, what would be cool
Yeah.
to kind of match the drum set. It's got a bit of a Tim Burton look. I love Tim Burton.
Yeah. Yeah.
He loves the black and white stripe motif. But I thought it's so kind of trippy, right? It's a very shocking
Yeah.
type of drum kit that I had thought that it paired really well with some of my fiance's photography. She does a particular edit where she'll leave the shutter speed open. So that way, if I'm moving like this,
Wow.
my body is still, but you'll see the motion of the arms.
I can just envision, yeah, what you're talking about. That's cool.
And if it's not that, she'll be able to compile images and kind of make it look like that classic image of the human body where you see the person with the arms at different heights and everything. So knowing that photography element, I thought that would pair really well with this drum solo. So I sought out a videographer whose name is Ray Alley, and he shot the whole thing, and he was able to also make the video look like the photo, but in video form. So when you see me move, you see a trail, like a vapor trail of me,
Yeah. Oh,
which is really cool. So with that, I thought, what musically could we do? And I love Kiss, of course. I
yeah.
love Peter Criss, Tommy Lee, because the kit is a 70s kit. And I love that those particular drummers I just listed off, the flange element is very common for a Peter Criss drum solo. Makes it sound a little spacey and ethereal. Tommy Lee used it on a couple tracks. It's pretty common for some drum things. And I thought, what if I do my own version
Yeah.
with the flange element? Not copying Peter Criss, I've done that.
Oh no. Yeah.
But what could I come up with that in a weird way would necessitate the flange? Because if you're doing something really fast and very double bass metally,
Yeah.
it really doesn't necessitate the flange, right? If we look at something like Chopper, which
Sure.
you've seen, putting that flange over it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I talked with a friend and kind of asked, what would you want to see out of the next drum solo?
Mhm.
And he had said, I want to see something that's a little more like groovy, a little more laid back, maybe more beat driven. And I
Yeah.
am personally not crazy about beat driven drum solos. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you lay down a drum beat and then
Yeah.
you kind of play off of it. You do a couple fills here and there, but predominantly it's about the groove and about the beat. I'm not crazy over the moon about those types of drum solos. I like more of the tom tom
Yeah. Yeah.
type of drum solos where you have all these different voices, but it's also still really really deep and.
I mean, it's much more than a drum solo, like we're saying. It's a performance piece. I mean,
Mhm.
and because it's just simply a drum solo, people are going to get bored with that. I mean, it's kind of like maybe equated to seeing somebody like Tommy Aldridge, doing what he does on the drums. Much more than just a typical drummer. Yeah,
Yeah, and to
yeah,
kind of spearhead, or in closing, basically, with what I was saying is, uh, all those elements came together, and that's how all these solos have been. There's an idea, but then it's how can that visually be represented? How can that turn into an art piece? So it wasn't like I was sitting there and in a weird way that the chick came before the egg.
yeah, yeah,
This
yeah,
is for all the musical element was there. I had thought about it, but all the same while you're thinking visually, how can this be cool, right?
yeah.
Um, because I take an enormous sense of pride in entertaining people that are not just drummers. I hope that actually more people that are watching these are not drummers,
Yeah.
because I think that a lot of musicians just don't get it.
I think it's entertainment. I mean, just
Yeah.
the few videos I've seen on the YouTube. I mean, I definitely am almost willing to bet that this video, this song piece is going to be different from the chopper. Because what's the point of having chopper part two? You've already done that.
Right. And
Yeah,
Chopper in and of itself is, if
fantastic. But
if you didn't read the description, thank you. If you did not read the description, uh, you would probably think I have no idea how to play drums, because none of it's in time. There is no phrasing. It is freestyle, but it's two different patterns on top of each other, and it's very uncalculated, very in the moment. But it's intended to sound like a motorcycle, and I'm pretty confident it sounds like
yeah,
uh, a motorcycle that's idling. Maybe it's getting a little faster. You're revving it. But this drum solo is meant to be a lot more musical,
yeah.
because again, you can't just have two crazy weird things back to back. You got to have some peaks and valleys.
Yeah. I mean,
So
it's kind of like, I mean, it's amazing to think that, John Bonham, I mean, probably when that name comes up, you always hear him talking about that one song, Moby Dick. That's what he's remembered for. But all these years later, you know what I mean? People are talking about it. People are still loving it. And
yeah,
yeah. And so, I mean, I think that's kind of what this is. It's an entertainment piece, it's a song, whatever you want to call it, but you're entertaining us. So I don't, as silly as it sounds, I don't even know that for people to say, oh, well, he doesn't know really how to play drums. I mean, watch the video, allow yourself to be entertained.
absolutely. I hope no one's saying that I don't know how to play. I mean, it's
No, that's what what you're just telling me that somebody, unless you read the description.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
On that
but yeah, I guess that what I'm saying is people oftentimes limit themselves. Oh, this is just some guy showing off on the drums. But I think if you take the time to watch the whole thing, and kind of take it in and see what it is.
yeah, I hope so. There's a lot of hate online, and a lot of people like to judge. A lot of people like to just kind of turn their nose up at stuff. But yeah, I mean, just take a step back and,
I
and
mean,
appreciate
I
that
think
someone spent a lot of time
to be fair to you,
creating
Quinton,
something.
I think your videos get pretty good numbers, and I think so. While there are those few haters out there, I think a lot more people are loving what you're doing, and so that's reason enough, I think, to keep up what you're doing.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll never stop, and no one should really. If you should really just do things that make you happy, despite what anyone says.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you're getting out there. You're doing these shows. You're playing live. You're putting out these videos for people to check out. And do you think like when you get enough of these tracks out, and again, I understand nobody's buying CDs or anything like they used to, but do you think you might put a collection out or something of these songs when you have maybe 9 or 10 of them?
I mean, I would love that. I love physical things.
Me too. That's why I'm
Yeah,
asking. Yeah,
physical things make me happy. I like collecting things. But we'll see. I mean, I love, I love, actually a huge influence was Billy Cobham on Phase. I've listened to Billy Cobham's entire discography
Yeah,
in the process of packing and moving because it's good listening music because it is all instrumental.
yeah,
And you don't have to completely focus on what's going on. It can just be in the background and you can digest it that way. So you look at someone like him,
yeah.
he's made a career of being a band leader and releasing solo
And
albums.
I gotta say, what I dig about what you're doing is, I mean, most people when they think of instrumental music, they think of, how many of us, especially if you grew up in the '80s and that, we remember all those great guitar albums like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, but those guys even stand out for what they do because yeah, oftentimes you listen to instrumental music, and let's be honest, it's hard to keep people's attention, but I think even what you're doing is so different from that oh, wow, this isn't guitar. This is centered around the drums. Wow, this is something different.
Absolutely. And it really did, in a weird backwards way, start out that way with backing up a couple of years when we were in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah,
Um, shows were shut down. We didn't have big rock shows, right, for a long time. In 2021, things started to open up a bit more.
yeah,
And for the longest time, I had envied the acoustic guitar player that could set up in a corner
yeah,
with and just sing
yeah,
songs. Um, because it's in a weird way, it's an easy kind of situation. You're not lugging the whole big rock show, but you're still entertaining people and you're still supporting your lifestyle because you're
yeah.
getting paid.
In
Um,
a very creative way. And what I dig about it too is like you're saying, it doesn't take much. You don't need to take a whole band with you. I mean, you could even have like online events where you tell people, hey, come watch me perform, from my basement or wherever we're going to be doing it. Check out what we're doing, and if you have any questions, maybe answer some questions. I mean, that's a cool thing. You can do events like that, and I think the option, the possibilities are just endless.
Absolutely. And furthermore on what I was saying is that with smaller shows coming back in 2021, um, I had really put in a lot of time to think about how could I do something myself. What
Yeah,
would be entertaining if you saw a drummer walk in, or if you walked into an event and saw just a drummer in a corner? What would
yeah,
that be? And because I had moved into an apartment situation, I had to buy an electric kit, and it's in front of me. And uh, I thought, well, this is the solution. This is the way that a drum set could be in a corner, and you have a volume knob because the age-old issue is that drums are too loud, this, that, and the other thing. Um, Acoustic drums, or I apologize, electric drums are not loud. They can be very quiet. So I put together basically a bunch of prog and hard rock metal songs that I really like that showcase the drums
yeah,
and started performing solo drum shows to rival the acoustic guitar people.
yeah, yeah.
And that
I, I,
basically kind of snowballed into, well,
this, yeah,
we got this, and now why don't we do more drum solos? And like, well, let's do in 2022, I did 2 solos. This year, I didn't have enough gas in the tank, so I'm going to do one.
yeah.
Maybe I'll work up another. We'll see what creative juices flow. But all in all, I mean,
And how do you
it's
love living in Nashville? Because musicians these days are either moving to Nashville or Las Vegas. I mean, what's it been like for you so far?
it's been good. I coming from Wisconsin, the weather is is really nice
Yeah, yeah,
uh, because it's not super cold. Not to confuse people. I mean, Wisconsin has beautiful summers,
sure.
but 8 months out of the year it's winter time.
Very
Spring
true.
and fall are kind of a myth in Wisconsin. So, not talking smack. I'm just talking realistically.
It's your
Um,
experience. Yeah, I asked you
but
how you like it. Yeah,
Tennessee is a lot more muggy, so that does work wonders for the hair
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because it is a little more voluminous. But
And you mentioned your dad was a drummer. How big of an influence was he on you picking up the sticks?
I I don't, I don't know if it's so much an influence as it is some more
Just
of
seeing
like a
it, being around
more
it.
in a way, and just someone to kind of bounce things off of.
Yeah,
I'd be 5 years old and he would be playing us the first Van Halen album,
Wow.
And he would like point out certain things, like because I had gotten a drum set and I'm the drummer kid.
Yeah.
Like, you hear that? Like that's really cool there. And I think all of us in a small way kind of want to get our parents' respect, and you want to be
Sure.
liked by parents. So
Sure.
in turn, you kind of like some of the things they do because they were just around when you're growing up. So,
Yeah.
um, but if anything, I mean, he introduced me to all of the
Great
legacy
drummer. Yeah.
dinosaur drummers,
Yeah.
Nick Peart and Peter Criss, and these just larger than life drummers. I mean, it's and they forged their own path
Yeah.
in ways, uh, created their own sound,
Yep.
because you can hear Neil Peart's drum sound in the 70s and you know that it's Neil Peart.
Well, Neil
You
Peart, the
hear
interesting thing about him, of
snare
course,
drum
is he's
and you
much
know
more than a drummer. He was a songwriter too.
yes, he was.
He was a new guy in the band for 40 years, but he was the most important guy in the band, I dare say.
Yeah. And I appreciate that aspect of him more now that I'm older. But at the time, hearing the drum solo from All the World's a Stage, their 1976 live album, that is a huge moment.
Yeah.
It's very impactful. So my dad more so just showed me things
Right.
that he really enjoyed from his youth, and I really just soaked that all up, learned what I could, and then when I got into like middle school and high school, there's different things that are popular. Of course, all of us drummers like Neil Peart and Mike Portnoy and everything, but then you find out who maybe the Rev is,
Yeah. Yeah.
who is an amazing drummer. You find out who Christian Colma is, who's the drummer for Black Veil Brides. He's incredible.
Yeah.
And all these newer people. And then, like I had said, Travis Barker, he's in a league of his own.
Yeah.
But
Now it's interesting, like you mentioned Tommy Lee and Peter Criss. Peter Criss sadly doesn't all too often doesn't get the credit he deserves. I think he was a monster of a drummer back in the day, and as people get older, they're not able to play anymore or whatever. But it's funny you mentioned Tommy Lee, because I've heard Tommy Lee talk about Peter Criss was a guy for him too.
Peter Criss is the guy for a lot of people. So was Ringo Starr. So was Tommy Lee. So was Bonzo.
Yeah.
No one really credits Ringo Starr with being this amazing drummer, but guaranteed he inspired a lot more people to pick up the drumsticks than
Oh, sure.
someone that is maybe more technically advanced.
Sure.
But
He's
I have to be
80
honest.
something years old, Quinton, and he's still out there performing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And then
But
you
I
hear
think at the end of the day, as you get older, it's more about just inspiring people to do
something.
more, right? To
Yeah.
pick up a pair of drumsticks, to be yourself.
Yeah. And then you look at a guy like Phil Collins, who was once a monster drummer. He's such a warrior, but he's at the point where he can't even play the drums. Thank God he's got that golden voice, so and he can still get up there and do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really cool too. I mean, a singing drummer is an odd commodity, but
Roger Taylor, Peter
for
Criss.
some reason I love those singing drummers, and Kiss has had a great track record, of course,
Eric
of singing
Singer.
drummers.
I had no idea he was a singer even until he was in Kiss. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Kiss didn't even know, right? They just hired him, and they're like, I can sing the backgrounds if you'd like.
Yeah.
But he's just better somehow. I mean, it's amazing. It's unreal.
Yeah, it's amazing. And what I love, I've seen some of the like drum covers you were talking about that you did, and what I loved about that is, yeah, you're playing somebody else's music, but you're making it your own in a way. People don't expect to hear like a drum cover. You know what I mean? And for that reason alone, it's so different. You're like, okay, this is kind of what I grew up on, and this is what I dig, and check this out, and put my spin on it. And so it's not like a carbon copy of the original. And I dig that.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, like I was saying, there's a fine line. Because if you're going to play from the record, a song from the 70s, let's say like a Kansas tune or something, it would be a little strange to add a bunch of double bass in that, right? It's not that it wasn't around then, but it would just be weird to add maybe like what we know as some Mike Portnoy fills into Carry On My Wayward Son.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it just stylistically would sound a little off. But
It's
what can
gotta,
you do
it's
to
gotta fit.
advance?
Yeah, it's gotta
Yeah,
fit the piece. And I do think that you could get to the point where you don't even need a singer, but maybe you want to bring in a couple guitar players and a bass player and put your drum set, like the front of the stage, like we're saying, and make your drum set the centerpiece. And it's not something you typically see, but it would make it fun and different and interesting.
absolutely. And in a foreshadowing kind of way that is happening.
Yeah.
Some of my two closest musical friends and I have tracked a whole album of material, and it is with the idea of, let's bring the drums into the spotlight. We didn't think about that specifically, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
all three of us are equal. It's very much a Rush kind of
I
dynamic.
get that. Yeah, yeah. But I just think you're on just something here. I don't know what to call, but I think it's great drumming, great. I want to call it a performance. It's entertainment, a performance artist, um, and
Thank you.
and and it's just fun. And as you can see, I took the time to go on your YouTube page and see what you're doing, and I definitely want to have you back when maybe after the single comes out, or you release a couple more tracks, or the other thing you're telling me about you and your friends are working on. When you're ready to release that, let's do this again because I'm all about promoting new music. I mean, I don't know if you call this music or performance art, whatever you want to call it, but it's great and it deserves to be have a light shine on. I'm happy to do what we can.
Thank you. Really, it's whatever it needs to be.
Yeah.
Is what I'm doing. Whatever it needs to be for you is all it is.
Yeah, and somebody else, what they listen to it, they check it out. It's going to mean something different to them, but I think they'll definitely get something out of it.
Absolutely.
Well,
But yes,
Quinton,
thank you for having me on.
yeah. You're
I
welcome
really
back here
appreciate
anytime.
you wanting me to be here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I said, I was impressed with what I saw. I said, I definitely got to reach out to this guy and see if we can get him on to talk about what he's doing. And so let's keep in touch, and I'd love to have you back. So this interview we just did will be going up probably sometime next week. I'll be sure to let you know when it does. Feel free to post it wherever you like. Because again, we're about as many people seeing this as possible. You take care, my friend.
You too, Jason. Thanks so much again.
Anytime. Bye bye.
Bye now.